There's an argument I've been seeing some Nintendo fanboys use recently, and it makes absolutely no sense. So with the price of Mario Tennis Fever being $70, which is a lot for a tennis game, a lot of people, myself included, have been critical of this price, saying it's just simply not worth that at the price tag. And there's been a lot of pushback from some people who defend anything Nintendo does, and their arguments have not really made any sense to me. And before I get into those, let me just start by saying, value is completely subjective. For me, Resident Evil Requiem is a game I value enough to spend $70 on. For you, it may not be. You may think Mario Tennis Fever is worth $70, and that's fine if you feel that way. It all depends on what you're willing to pay and what you feel is worth it. So going back to one of the arguments I've been seeing is that if you don't want to pay $70 for Mario Tennis Fever, you're poor. You're poor or you're cheap. And I think both of these fall apart pretty quickly if you actually look at the argument. The best example I can give is, let's say you want water, just a regular plastic water bottle. If I have one to sell to you and I say it costs $20, you're gonna say, you're crazy, it's not worth that price. Does that mean you can't afford it? Does that mean you're cheap? Probably not. You could probably pay $20 if you wanted it enough. The value just isn't there for most people. It's something you want, but it's an unreasonable price, and just because you can afford it doesn't mean you need to spend money on it. Now, there may be people who still pay for it, and that's their choice, but should we be blaming someone who doesn't want to pay that super high price? No, and it's the same thing here. Just because you don't want to spend $70 on a video game doesn't mean you're cheap or you're broke. It means you've made that decision that it isn't worth it to you. Now, there could be times where someone legitimately can't afford it, and if that is the case, I think it's pretty rude to just dunk on that person for not being able to afford it, but I don't think that's what these people are trying to do. I think they legitimately just think that since Nintendo has set this price at $70, and since it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things, that we shouldn't be able to voice concerns about the price, that we shouldn't be able to say, this looks fun, but I don't want to pay this price for it. I'm a baseball fan. If I want to go to a game, but the prices are $500, I'm not going to go to it. You don't need to just throw money away just because you have it. And I think in more cases, the people who are saying you don't want to spend $70 on a game, you're broke, you're cheap, those are the people that are more likely to be financially irresponsible if they're just willing to spend money on anything, just whatever Nintendo throws them, whatever price it is. I think it's a very poor way of thinking, and I think these people are one of two things. They're either kids who don't understand how money works, or they're adults who are just so blindly loyal to Nintendo that they'll defend any decision they make and try to make you seem like the unreasonable one. And this argument is more common than you think, and this is not just a few people I've seen do this, but they have other claims they'll make. So one is that it's only $10 more than a $60 game when Nintendo charges for $70, and that money adds up. If you buy 6 games a year at $70 compared to $60, that's now a $60 game you could have bought with that money. For me, I don't pay full price for a game unless it's a game I really want. For a Resident Evil Requiem, for a Donkey Kong Bonanza, if there's a new 3D Mario or 3D Zelda, those are games I will pay the full price for because they're worth it to me. Most of the games I get, I'm okay with waiting for a sale or waiting until they drop in price, and that allows me to just get more games. If I get 10 games at $40, that's $400. If I pay full price at $70, that's $300 more. And I think a lot of people just don't really comprehend how money works, or are just not responsible enough to really put this in perspective. Because even though $10 is not a lot of money, it does add up. And excusing these decisions when they're unreasonable is just being a fanboy. It's being too loyal to a company. It doesn't make you look successful when you do this. It makes you either look like a fanboy, or makes it seem like you're trying too hard to not seem broke. Gaming is an expensive hobby, but if you want to make the most out of it, you can try and hunt for deals. You can wait to get that game you don't need to get immediately. And that doesn't say anything bad about you, and I don't think there should be a stigma there. Because Mario Tennis Fever and a lot of other Nintendo games, I just simply don't think are worth the price. There's $80 games like Mario Kart World, which I think is probably $30 too expensive if I'm being honest. There's $80 Switch 2 editions, which I think are completely unreasonable, but these have been getting defended. And like I said, you're entitled to believe whatever you want, whatever you think something is worth, but I just find that hard to defend. And it's not just 10, it's not just $20 more, but it adds up. If $80 becomes the new norm for a game, that's simply more money out of your pocket that you could have been using for other games or other important things. So now the next argument I want to get to is that, well, if I can get 50 hours out of this game, it's worth it because I'll go to the movies and spend $20 or $30 for 2 hours there. And I don't think we should be using hours to necessarily justify this. First of all, things are just priced differently. Experiences are worth different things. No one is going to pay $70 to just watch a movie. No one's going to spend $40 to watch a regular movie. Now, is it true you can spend $60 and get a game that you'll play for 100 hours? Yes. But then we're putting price per hour, which doesn't really make sense for a game. I also think the hours argument is bad because I'd rather play a 12-hour game that's an amazing experience than a 100-hour game where it just feels repetitive and bloated. Different forms forms of media are just priced differently. It's simple as that. You don't judge a book by the cost of a page or a concert by how much it costs per minute. There's also some psychology here, because someone can use the hours in a game to justify the $70 that they spent. Doesn't mean you're coping, but also can be trying to justify the money that you spent. There's a lot of nuance here, and it would take more of a deep dive to really go into. But I also think it's just common sense that some games are just not worth the price. For example, Rocket League is a game I have hundreds of hours in. That doesn't mean it's worth hundreds of dollars. Value just depends on the experience of the game. Now, it's true that a big RPG or a big multiplayer game can give you a lot more hours, but they serve different purposes than a more curated, shorter game. Because I can say from experience, some of the best games I've ever played have been under 10 hours, and the 10 hours playing that game were better than the 50 hours playing another game. Again, this is just another argument I don't feel as good. But going back to Nintendo's pricing, and not just Nintendo, but all companies, whether it's Sony charging $70 for The Last of Us remake, which didn't need to happen, or studios trying to charge $70 for games that simply are just not good, the best thing I could recommend to all of you is make your own decisions. Don't just listen for someone else's opinion on what you should do with a game. You can take that into account, but if you love Mario Tennis, if it's your favorite thing of all time, then spend the $70 and get it. But for most people, they're not going to want to spend $70 on this game. Most are either just going to wait or reluctantly spend it if they feel that the price may be high, but it's still worth it to them to get it at full price. All I can say for myself is that for something like Resident Evil Requiem that I mentioned, I'll spend $70 on that game, and I'm expecting it to be worth it. For me, I just know that $70 would not be worth it for Mario Tennis Fever, and I know that $70 isn't worth it for me for a lot of games. I'd rather use that money to get multiple games that I feel would be better worth that, because I and all of you likely work hard for money, and don't want to just spend it for the sake of spending it. And also, something I didn't mention is obviously inflation exists, but I think a lot of people, when they're talking about inflation, don't understand the full picture. Yes, $70 now is not much higher than $60 10 years ago. It's probably about the same, but wages haven't kept up. And that also ties into it that even though $70 now is similar to $60 10 years ago, it doesn't mean that people necessarily have that extra money. So that's why inflation is a way more nuanced discussion than we're actually having with them when we just say, oh, you have to keep in mind inflation, that's why games are going up. And yeah, it makes sense, but there's a lot more to that discussion that we're not really talking about, and I think that's just important to keep in mind. To close out this video, I just want to say, if you think a game is worth $70, if you think it's worth $80, if you think it's worth $500, spend whatever you want on a game, because it is just a form of entertainment. It's up to you to decide if it's worth it to you. But I also think that we should be somewhat responsible with spending. Just don't spend money just because you have to. If you feel that a game is priced poorly, like if you think that it's way too expensive for what you're getting, and you don't want to support whatever company's making it for that, wait to get it. Whether you wait for a sale, wait for a price drop, get it used. Most new games coming out, I can tell you from my perspective, I don't think they're games that you need to spend the full price for, especially when it's easy to get games on sale outside of Nintendo games, like fairly quickly after. Like some of my favorite games I've played in the past few years, I've gotten not too long after launch, and I've gotten at very good prices. Like Silent Hill 2, one of my favorite games of all time. I would have spent $70 if I knew how good it was going to be, but instead I waited at first and I had it for something like 30 or 40. And it's not an old game. I got it, I think, less than a year after it came out. But that's just my rant here. It's just something I've been seeing for a long time on a lot of different places. People not really understanding this concept and having what in my opinion is just not a sound argument. I just want to go over this today, especially with Mario Tennis Fever coming out and a lot of contention about the price of that. Mario Tennis Fever, I've also seen the story mode is like 3 to 4 hours, and I've seen other people say people who have played it say it's just not worth the price either. So take that as you will. So just let me know if you have any counters to anything I've said. Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe.